Denise's new intuition brain game for traders. Following your gut feeling. Building confidence in your decisions. Self-awareness is edge. Removing your hidden biases. All this today and more on the Futures Radio Show podcast with author of Market Mind Games, Performance, Strategy, and Decision Advisor at the Rethink Group, Denise Shull. Futures Radio Show is sponsored by CME Group. They are the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world effectively manage risk. For access to free educational tools and resources for the active individual trader, please visit activetrader.cmegroup.com. For new show notifications, please subscribe to Futures Radio Show podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher. This show is also sponsored by Trading Technologies, RJO Futures, and FTSE Russell. The Russell 2000 is a key benchmark for small-cap U.S. stocks. Be sure to check out the E-Mini Russell 2000 Futures symbol, RTY, and Micro E-Mini Russell 2000 Futures symbol, M2K. To learn more about FTSE Russell and their products, please visit FTSERussell.com. You recently launched a game, and that game is really about intuition versus impulse. And I know you're calling it the intuition brain game.
Yeah. So traders always use their intuition, or they talk a lot about using their intuition. Now, separately, like behavioral finance, and there's all kinds of people who will say you can never trust your intuition. But, overall, when you talk to people, accomplished traders know they have a sense of intuition. So the game is meant to help you be able to find that, like help someone who's confused about intuition experience that sense of it. It's a very quiet, non-energized, physical experience. So the game's set up to push you to access that, which is really like, don't think, listen to what your body tells you. Focus and just answer. Now, behind the scenes, it's about social prediction, which is really about what markets are about. It sometimes frustrates people because they're overthinking it. But it's based on a lot of research related to the skill of predicting price or tape reading and what intuition is really about. It starts with a classic experiment from 1944 related to how people do like predicting other people. And then that was also used in a PhD dissertation at Caltech, where they showed that people who were good at predicting what these shapes are going to do in the game were also better at predicting price in the market. So like we're using that sort of like, what is intuitive tape reading? And there's kind of two sides to that. The tape reading part and the intuition that tells you you're doing that, but sort of pushing you by scoring you to not think and to listen to a physical sense of intuition.
Well, I played the game. Thank you for sending it to me when you had just put it out. And what I love about a lot of the things that you do in our conversations is that you challenge me. And it challenged me mentally, because when I first logged into this game, you don't know what to expect, because right. I didn't really know what the game was going to be like at all. And I'm sitting there and I was looking at it. I think it was a triangle, a square, and like a circle, and it looked like there was like a room boxed off. And I was looking at it going, okay, let's see what this is all about. And a couple of things that you mentioned were what I leaned on. Was I was looking at it going, okay, so now I have to anticipate what happens next, obviously a lot like the market. And I was looking to see if there was some pattern that was forming. And, there was a lot of ways it could go, but I just wanted it to just follow my gut, because I'm like, okay, this is the first time I'm doing this. Just follow your gut, because I don't really know what this game is really about. At this point, I'm just going in there and just trying to feel it out. And I follow my gut the whole way. And what it taught me at the end of it was, look, when you're at the market, you may think you know what's going to happen, right? But you're looking at these patterns, and we have these things that we could think about. But at the end of the day, be confident with your decision making. Be confident with your gut. I think this really feeds a lot of the discretionary traders out there. Right. And just follow it. Because to me, that path of just following my gut and everything that I've done in my preparation is better than me questioning it, because then I'm going to get lost in the middle of it anyway and not, I'm probably, screw it up in a sense. So that was the first thing that I took away from it.
Yeah. I mean, the truth of the matter is, the more expertise someone has, the more that expertise exists as a feeling in their body, as a physical sensation. Because what happens is, like, when you first learn something, right, you have to slowly do step 1, step 2, step 3, anything that you learn. And the more experience you get with it, and the more you know about it, and the better you are at it, the faster you do it completely on feel without even thinking about it. Because the knowledge goes from this conscious, linear, in your head series of steps to how does the whole thing fit together? How do the pieces, parts fit together? And it becomes subconscious. And your access to that subconscious is through your body. I mean, we typically call it gut feel, but it really is unconscious pattern recognition. Researchers will call it visceral intelligence. I mean, some people will call it kinesthetic intelligence. I once put a survey out on Twitter, like which word people like the best, and it ended up being visceral intelligence, and that's what researchers, have tended to coalesce around. But what that means, it means physical intelligence. Things that we learn that start out as conscious and explicit in our heads, as we get better at knowing them, they basically submerge, they become subconscious, but our access to them is through that feeling in our body. So the game is meant to help you in a completely harmless way, except maybe for your ego, to experience that. And because human beings have an innate ability to predict other people, like we're using it all the time. It's called theory of mind in research. But like you have to, you walk down the street in New York or anywhere, you're constantly judging what you're driving, you're constantly aware of, like, what you have to do on a crowded highway is theory of mind. Like, keep track of where other people are and where you are in relationship to them. Well, we all do that. Most of us can get better at it. I mean, back to the research shows that really great traders are using the parts of the brain associated with that more than they're using probability. I mean, a study that's referenced on the site said that directly. And the professor who sponsored the PhD student is the one who gives us a reference on the site saying why this is such a great tool. Now, I know some people get frustrated with it because they overthink it. So you totally did the right thing. Like, just listen to what your body was telling you.
A lot of things I want to talk a little bit more about that you mentioned. And it just keeps coming back to my mind. What this is it builds confidence and just making a decision. And I've said this a bunch of times before, that a more confident trader with a lower statistical probability will probably do better than a trader that lacks confidence with a higher statistical probability strategy. Because that person, once they get to the point of lacking that confidence in going forward with their execution, is when you could start to get lost in just what's happening around you. And I've talked about in the past how I was surrounded by all these traders in the pit, and all of their edges were them. It was their confidence in the way that they carried myself. I watched the most successful people do this as a new trader, and I was like trying to be like each one of them, and they all had their own independent way of being. And I found that really it just comes down to me being confident in what I'm doing. The strategy itself isn't the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's believing in what I was doing, and that would trump any statistical edge in a sense.
It's totally true. I'm giving this workshop that was supposed to be a live workshop last year. And of course, we're just doing it online until who knows when. But we were talking about this last night, which is like the fundamental concept that I've had since I really started speaking about the psychology of trading is your results are a joint probability. They're like the probability of your system, and just as you're saying, the probability of your ability to execute. And you can definitely take a sort of lesser statistical market view. And if you execute better, over time, you're going to make more money. Because you're exactly right. People like start to look at their whatever, their setups are, their ideas are, their strategies are, but then they don't really believe them, or they're not really sure, and then they hesitate, and then they're late, or you can't execute. So like if people would take their mental, what I like to call their psychological capital, as seriously as they take and I want to put forward, as they take where the S&Ps are, like that you're keeping track of the market and you're working with yourself such that your psychological capital is expanding. You're either being confident, or if you're not confident, you're effectively dealing with the fear and anxiety as opposed to just trying to set it aside. And within that, you learn to listen to that intuition, unconscious pattern recognition, gut feel. And basically at first you sort of learn to grit your teeth and push the button anyway, because like your body's telling you it's true. The trick, however, is to be able to learn to know yourself well enough to know when the signal your body's giving you is impulse, which is usually higher energy, agitated, has like another motivator, like fear of missing out, versus when the signal your body's telling you is, what's most likely to happen is fill in the blank, based on all the time I've spent studying markets. So the game is meant to tell you what that second feeling is like.
Explain more on how it develops that.
Well, people don't know. They just don't know, right? So, what I expect to happen with people is they play the game. They don't, unless they're a really intuitive trader already, they don't score very well. And even if they are an intuitive trader, they might not score very well because they might think, okay, I have to like overthink this. But if you keep playing, it's some sort of like, I don't think people should play for hours a day. I think you should play for 5-10 minutes a day, but if you figure out while you're doing it, like how you score well. I try to give enough clues, like don't overthink it, just listen to your body. But it's hard for people to even know how to do that, particularly for highly analytical people. So it's literally meant to help you practice listening to the pattern recognition you're not aware of, listening to the physical sensation, your gut, it could be your chest, depending on the person, but listening to the answer your body delivers, which requires focusing and essentially turning off your thinking brain, except for the fact that you're focusing on what your body tells you. And so, over time, people should be able to get more of them right. There's also the warm-up aspect to it, where it just, even like sometimes you get a bunch right and sometimes you don't get a bunch right, but like it just reminds you by playing for a few minutes.
Yep.
It reminds you like how calm and subtle that feeling is of unconscious pattern recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I did it before the open, and I remember emailing you right when I finished. I said I got 3 correct and 1 incorrect, and it got my brain going before the open, and it taught me once again just be confident in what you're doing, right? At the end of the day, the result is going to be what the result is. Your confidence is what is important, win or lose. Later on, you could fix what you're looking at in your strategy. That can always be tweaked and worked on. I'm always looking at that. But confidence, when that goes south, that's a problem. And you mentioned that you could feel it in your chest or your gut. And I just want to say this for myself. I know when I'm in that zone of everything is going well, I don't have pressure in my chest. We've talked about it, you and I, extensively with my heart attack, and I hold stress in my chest. The minute I start to feel pressure in my chest, that means that whether I'm aware of it or not, as I'm in the moment, I am frustrated.
Right.
And I feel something that's telling me, look, you need to step away because I am now battling the market and myself in a position of weakness versus strength. And I tweeted about this the other day. I said, having self-awareness is the greatest edge that I have found, one of the greatest edges I have found in my trading. And this is something that I think helps people become more self-aware of that mental feeling of following your gut and being confident.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you that self-awareness is a wildly underexploited edge. It's sort of easier to like focus on the chart and yeah. So right there, it becomes an edge for anyone who's willing to undertake it. And then there's like, how do you even really undertake it? You know? But you haven't lost any money and you've learned something. So, I mean, I totally agree with you that confidence is a huge thing. I think the challenge though is what do you do when you don't have it? Like, where do you get it from? I'll argue that understanding the fears and anxieties, and this goes beyond the game, like, creating more self-awareness about what your fears or anxieties are. Like you said, when you have the feeling in your chest, that like something, you're frustrated and you're probably not seeing things right. Being able to put those things into words, which is, a lot of what our other work is about, which is called emotion differentiation. But the game teaches you the gut feel part, and allows you to build confidence in your like awareness of that in a really super unique way that, while it looks kind of goofy and elementary, is very, very science-based.
Traders, we're going to pause for 30 seconds and we'll be right back. A question I constantly get is, what platform do I use to trade futures? Well, I use TT. They are the world's fastest commercially available futures trading platform. Learn more at tryttnow.com. RJO is a long-standing brokerage firm with personal broker relationships to help you learn and trade futures. To learn more, please visit rjofutures.com. You said, what do you do when you lose your confidence? And I'll tell you what I do is I just try to make one right decision, just doing what I set out and intended to do and see how that feels. Going back to the game, go into the game as a warm-up before you begin to trade. Do what your gut is telling you, live with the result. If you're frustrated with the result, then to me, this is where I would say mental edge versus ego can get in the way, because I've noticed this, gosh, how many times in my career where it's like I'm doing everything I wanted. And like I said, all of a sudden I have this pressure in my chest. It's just telling me that I'm getting frustrated with what's happening. It's most of the time it's because of the result. But at the end of the day, if I start doing things outside of what I intended to do, then I'm just a mess. Yeah. And I think this game a lot, we always talk about as traders, journaling your trades, doing all of that. And I've talked a lot about this, is journaling yourself. I think that's where you'll find that mental edge. And if you start to do that with a game like this, and it just tells you, I don't want to say like your tolerance of dealing with loss, but it's like, we're competitors, right? And if you're going to do a game and you're just trying to win so hard at it as opposed to following your gut,
right?
To me, that frustration will spill over into your trading, because when I really feel like I'm trying super hard to make a result, that result just gets further and further out of reach. Yeah. If I allow things to be what they are, then all of a sudden good things start to happen.
Right. As we were testing it a few weeks ago, I sent it to a couple, besides you, I sent it to a couple of clients and friends. And I have this one client who's so hard on himself. Like it's almost indescribable how hard on himself he is. And he was getting like frustrated to the max, like, sending me emails saying, I can't do this. This is horrible. I hate this. Blah, 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 blah. And I sent it to this other guy who's been trading for like 20 years, who claims to trade completely on intuition. He does the first one, he sends me, I got 5 out of 5. I'm like, I'm not the least bit surprised. Because he just naturally, listens to his gut. And he has confidence in listening to his gut too. But just like trying to force it in the market, I mean, you absolutely can't force it in this game. You absolutely cannot. The only chance you have of getting the answer right is to turn off that overthinking. Well, I mean, okay, there's some statistical, 1 of 4 or whatever, but
sure.
The only chance you have of scoring well, let's say, is to turn off the overthinking, anxiety-ridden, trying to make something happen energy, and sit back and just let your subconscious deliver you a result in your body.
It comes down to, once again, being present in
It
a
does,
situation.
yeah. It totally does.
I know that you come into the trading day. One thing I want to talk to you about, as I think this is kind of similar to this conversation, is just that underlying bias. And we're coming out of a time now where, the election created a lot of underlying bias as to what the market will do. And I could tell you, most people did not guess this is what's going to happen in the market, in a lot of markets. So at the end of the day, it comes down to being present in that situation and allowing yourself to deal with what is in front of you. And this is where frustration can come into play really easily because of that underlying bias that I think a lot of traders come to the market with. Look, I'm guilty of it as well. I mean, it happens. But I do my absolute best in being present and avoiding that. Can you talk to us about how traders can help themselves become more present and kind of avoid coming into the day with that underlying bias?
Yeah, I think the single skill is knowing what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, which is a very easy thing to say, and for the most part doesn't sound very hard to understand, but is a difficult thing to do to get it right. Meaning, like, you could know that you're not only confident something's going to happen, you've got yourself in a position where you need something to happen.
Yes.
And what does that mean? Or so what's going to happen then is you're going to have confirmation bias. You're going to see the parts of the market, they're going to support the thing that you need to happen. Well, conversely, if you can be honest with yourself and say, I really want X, Y, and Z to happen because I put on these, 3 big positions around that idea. Like, having the courage to admit you really want it to happen can lead you to say, what's most likely to happen? A variation on that is like knowing how afraid you are if something doesn't happen, and being able to like physically access that fear. What am I feeling? I'm afraid this, whatever, the market's not going to play out the way I thought it was. I have on these big positions, I'm afraid I'm going to lose X amount of money. And by the way, people tend to catastrophize here, and goes beyond losing X amount of money. But I'll just stop there for right now. Like, if you can look those fears in the eye and again, physically feel them, and they're going to be stronger physical sensations than the intuition of the game. They're going to be more motivating. Like, there's going to be more energy around them. But if you can identify them with the what am I feeling and why am I feeling it and get it accurate, you open up space mentally to be more present objectively and in reality. And what's your best decision to optimize your chances of making the money, or at least not losing the money. It goes on and on and on, but it all goes back to this dictionary of yourself. Like, what am I feeling and why? What do these different feelings mean to me personally? Like, I'll never know what your tension in your chest actually feels like, because I can never be inside your body. Vice versa, we never know exactly what someone else feels like. We can only know that for ourselves. But traders who make that a strategy will, number one, get better at it, because you're not fighting the system. Like, the system is built on feelings, senses, feelings, and emotions, on the prediction of senses, feelings, and emotions, and particularly feelings and emotions, not on our intellect. But everyone's taught that it's based on our intellect. We can use our intellect to get better at what's really going on, which is, you can say that another way. We can use our intellect to create self-awareness. And as we create more self-awareness, then we'll know, like, are we biased that we really want X to happen? We either said it publicly, we already put on positions. By being able to admit that to ourselves and admit the desire, the feeling underneath it, it actually tends to mitigate those feelings that cause us to not be present, basically. I hope that made sense.
I love it. That was great. And we're actually going to end today there, Denise. I got to tell you, every time I speak with you, you challenge me. I learn something. I'm so appreciative to all the work that you do. And I want traders to go out there and try this game. I think you will be very happy with it. So tell everybody where they could go and try it, and also let everybody know where they could follow you on Twitter.
Well, on Twitter, I'm at Denise K. Shull, and I think it's a pinned tweet right now.
Okay.
You would think that someone would come on a podcast like this and know where to tell you to go. But if you go to the rethinkgroup.net, honestly, I think it's under services, and you scroll down and it says Intuition Brain Game.
I'll post a link, everybody, in this post. So if you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, or any one of those, you could go to either the YouTube page where this is posted, or any actually of the iTunes page, and on our website. I'll post a link, and I'll retweet Denise's tweet following this being recorded. So, but you got to go and follow Denise on Twitter. You got to go and check out her website, and she's got so much great information out there. Denise, you're the best. Thank you so much for joining me today on Futures Radio Show.
Well, you just made my day. Thank you very much. And on that note, I'll talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to Futures Radio Show. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review on iTunes. You can listen to all of our episodes on futuresradioshow.com, iTunes, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher.